Evening light stretched across the Blue Ridge Mountains as Margaret Maggie Hayes sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile tea. Her phone buzzed. It was her son-in-law, Jason. "My parents will move in Friday. If you don't like it, go back to the city," he said, his tone cold, final. Maggie didn't reply. She watched fog crawl through the valley, feeling the quiet shift inside her. "They thought I'd give in," she whispered. "After 42 years of caring for others, this cabin was the first thing that belonged to me." I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I took notes. That was the night her peace became her test. For most of her life, Maggie had been a nurse in Dallas. Double shifts, emergency calls, Christmases spent under fluorescent lights instead of tree lights. Every paycheck she tucked away a little more, dreaming of a quiet retirement surrounded by pine and wind. When she finally signed the deed for a small cabin near Asheville, she cried right there in the lawyer's office. 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, and a wraparound porch. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. On her first night, she turned off her phone and listened to the forest breathe. No machines, no patients, no demands, just the crackle of the fire and the soft creak of old wood. "This," she whispered, "is the sound of freedom." For 3 blissful weeks, she lived that dream. Coffee at sunrise, books by the fire, letters from her daughter, Anna, saying she was proud of her mom's new life. But peace is a fragile thing. One phone call was all it took to remind Maggie that even the strongest boundaries can be crossed by family. Maggie had to drive 8 miles to find cell service. When she finally reached the ridge, her phone exploded with missed calls. One name flashed again and again. "Anna! Mama, thank God! We've got a serious problem." Her daughter's voice trembled. Jason's parents lost their home. Some issue with the bank, overdue payments. "They're moving in with you for a few months." Maggie froze, gripping the steering wheel. "Anna, no. This cabin barely fits me. I came here to be alone." "I know, but they have nowhere else to go," Anna pleaded. "They're your grandkids' grandparents. Don't be selfish." The word selfish sliced through her like a scalpel. 40 years of sacrifice erased in one sentence. When Maggie hung up, she sat in silence, staring at the horizon. Not a single person had asked if she wanted this. They had decided for her. That night she couldn't sleep. The cabin, once her sanctuary, now felt invaded, like someone had opened a window in her soul and let the wind in. They were coming Friday, but so was something else. Maggie's quiet rebellion. The next morning, Maggie brewed her coffee and opened a notebook. Years in hospitals had taught her one thing: never react in panic. Plan with precision. If Jason's parents thought they could claim her home, they were in for a surprise. She called an old colleague, Tom Reyes, now a real estate attorney in town. "No one can force you to host anyone, Maggie," he assured her. "But don't leave your property unattended. Document everything." That evening, she drove into town, bought a few supplies: a bottle of harmless snake repellent from a vet, fertilizer with a pungent odor, and some leftover snake skins he used for research. "Mountain folks say these keep critters away," the vet chuckled. Back home, Maggie scattered the repellent near the porch, slipped one snake skin under the guest bed, another by the bathroom door. She planted bug-hating herbs outside the windows and turned down the water heater just enough to make showers unpleasant. It wasn't malice. It was strategy. She poured herself tea and smiled faintly. "Let's see how long they last in paradise," she murmured as the forest hummed around her. Friday came wrapped in sunlight and dread. Maggie set out cookies and coffee on the porch, a performance of politeness masking a storm. At 3 p.m., a gray SUV crawled up the dirt road. Jason stepped out first, followed by Anna and his parents, Walter and Denise. They looked out of place among the pine, city shoes on muddy ground, noses wrinkling at the scent of earth. "Mrs. Hayes," Walter said stiffly, extending a hand. "We appreciate your hospitality." "Always happy to help family," Maggie replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Inside, Denise's face twisted. "What's that smell?" "Organic fertilizer," Maggie said sweetly. "Mountain soil needs extra care." You'll get used to it. She guided them to the guest room. When Denise noticed something coiled beneath the bed, she shrieked. Maggie bent down calmly. Ah, another snake shed. They're harmless, usually. That night, the wind carried whispers and nervous footsteps. From her room, Maggie heard Jason mutter, "This place is a nightmare." She smiled in the dark, the faintest flicker of victory warming her chest. Her peace had been stolen, but control, that she was taking back. The first night was everything Maggie had anticipated and more. Around 2 a.m., she quietly tapped a button on her old phone, triggering a motion alarm she'd set near the woodpile. The metallic clang echoed through the still air. Denise screamed. Walter stumbled into the hallway, clutching a flashlight like a sword. What was that? Jason barked. Probably just a possum, Maggie said, strolling out in her robe. Or maybe a wild boar. They wander near the porch sometimes. No one slept after that. By dawn, Walter's eyes were bloodshot. Denise sat trembling on the couch, and Jason looked ready to explode. Coffee? Maggie asked brightly. You'll need it. Mornings here start early. As they sipped in silence, she added casually, The vet warned me. Snakes love the heat this season. But don't worry, most bites are non-lethal. Anna shot her mother a sharp look, half suspicion, half disbelief. Maggie only smiled. That afternoon, she hiked to the ridge with her phone and called Tom. They're cracking, she reported. Keep calm, Maggie, he said. Let them decide to leave. You just keep being hospitable. Maggie liked that word. By the third day, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Denise spent her morning spraying perfume to cover the country smell. Walter refused to split firewood, claiming his back hurt, and Jason, always glued to his phone, kept whispering about papers and timelines. At breakfast, Maggie caught a phrase that made her freeze. Mom can't manage this place forever, Jason murmured to Anna. If she signs, we could... He stopped when he noticed Maggie entering the room. Could what? She asked lightly. Jason smiled too quickly. Just talking about refinancing interest rates, you know. Maggie nodded, masking the chill running down her spine. Later that afternoon, while fetching towels from the hall closet, she saw an unsealed folder peeking out from Jason's briefcase. Inside lay a printed document labeled Transfer of Ownership. Her name was there, neat and centered, waiting for a signature. Maggie quietly returned it to its place. That night, she didn't sleep. She wrote in her notebook instead. When someone plans to take what's yours, don't argue. Observe. The louder they talk, the more they reveal. The next morning, Maggie found Anna sitting on the porch steps, her face pale and drawn. She looked like someone who had finally seen the edges of a truth she didn't want to touch. Mom, she said quietly, did you look in Jason's briefcase? Maggie didn't answer. Anna sighed, eyes brimming. He told me you were getting confused lately, that maybe you shouldn't live alone anymore. I believed him. Maggie's chest tightened. And now, Anna pulled a folded paper from her pocket. It was a bank form with Maggie's signature, only it wasn't hers. The handwriting was close, but not perfect. I found this in his desk, Anna said, voice shaking. He's trying to refinance your property behind your back. Maggie took the paper, held it to the light, then laid it flat on her knee. You came here because you already knew the answer, she said softly. Anna nodded, tears falling. I'm sorry, Mom. Maggie reached for her daughter's hand. Don't be. This isn't the end of something. It's the start of setting it right. The mountain air between them felt heavier, but also clearer, like truth finally had space to breathe. Maggie drove into town the next morning with a calm that felt almost clinical. Years of nursing had trained her to act under pressure without showing fear. She met with Tom Reyes again, handed him the forged document, and explained everything. Jason's lies, Anna's discovery, and the suspicious folder in his briefcase. Tom skimmed the papers and nodded. This isn't just manipulation, Maggie. It's attempted fraud. We'll get ahead of it. He helped her notarize her signature, date every document she owned, and draft a legal notice stating that no financial or property transactions could be made on her behalf without written verification. That afternoon, Maggie and Anna recorded a short video in the cabin. Maggie sat by the fire, speaking clearly. "My name is Margaret Hayes. I am of sound mind, and this cabin belongs solely to me. No one has permission to transfer, sell, or refinance it." When they finished, Maggie saved copies on 3 devices and mailed one to Tom's office. She looked at Anna and said, "We don't fight with anger. We fight with paper." And for the first time since this began, Anna smiled through her tears. 2 days later, a white SUV pulled into Maggie's driveway. A woman in a navy jacket stepped out, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Vanessa Gomez from Adult Protective Services. We received a call expressing concern about your well-being." Maggie smiled politely. "Of course. Please come in." The cabin was spotless. Fresh coffee brewed on the stove. Medications labeled by day. Emergency numbers pinned to the fridge. Vanessa's eyes softened. "You live alone?" "By choice," Maggie said. "But I have a daughter who visits weekly, neighbors who check in, and a lawyer who knows every detail of my affairs." Maggie handed her a folder containing the medical evaluation, notarized documents, and video declaration. After a long pause, Vanessa smiled. "Mrs. Hayes, you're more organized than half the offices I inspect. You have nothing to worry about." When she left, Anna closed the door and exhaled. "Jason made that call, didn't he?" "Of course," Maggie said calmly. "It means we're hitting a nerve." She poured 2 cups of tea. "Let him dig his own hole. We'll just keep shining light on it." That night, the mountain felt different, too quiet. Maggie was writing in her notebook when the motion light outside flickered on. Through the window, she saw a shadow move near the tool shed, then disappear into the trees. She called Tom first, then the sheriff. Within half an hour, a patrol car crawled up the dirt road. The officer found boot prints in the mud, but nothing else. The next morning, Maggie met a private investigator named Priya Shah, sharp, calm, and practical. Within days, Priya uncovered what Maggie had suspected. Jason had taken out multiple payday loans under false pretenses, listing family property as potential collateral. "He's desperate," Priya said. "And when people like that panic, they get careless." Tom arranged for security cameras and motion sensors through an old contact, a retired deputy named John Hale. John installed everything in one afternoon, his voice steady. "If anyone comes back, I'll know before they hit the porch." That night, when the lights flickered again, Maggie didn't flinch. She closed her journal and whispered, "Let them come. I've got truth, law, and a camera lens waiting." The phone rang just after breakfast. Maggie glanced at the screen. "Jason," she pressed record on her landline before answering. "Maggie, we need to talk," he began, his voice tight but trying to sound reasonable. "This whole thing has gone too far. You've embarrassed the family. I just wanted to help manage your finances before..." "Before what?" Maggie cut in. "Before I forget my own name? Or before you forged it?" There was silence on the other end. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jason said finally. "You will," Maggie replied evenly. "Tom has everything. Your fake forms, your loan records, and the sheriff's report. You tried to make me look unstable. Now you'll explain that in writing. Are you threatening me?" "No," she said softly. "I'm documenting you." When the call ended, Anna sat frozen beside her. "Mom, that was brutal." Maggie took a sip of her tea. "It wasn't brutal, dear. It was professional." Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the porch rails like applause from the mountain itself. By noon, Tom had drafted the documents that would end the chaos once and for all. Jason would sign a legal agreement, forfeiting any claim to Maggie's property and assuming full responsibility for his debts. In exchange, Maggie would not pursue criminal charges for fraud or forgery, provided he stayed away permanently. Anna sat quietly in Tom's office, hands folded in her lap. "He's not the man I thought I married," she said softly. Tom nodded. "He's the man he thought he could get away with being." That evening, Jason arrived to sign. His expression was hollow, his confidence gone. He signed each page quickly, barely reading. Maggie signed next. Steady, deliberate. Her signature bold and final. When it was done, Jason looked up. "You'll never forgive me, will you?" Maggie met his eyes. "Forgiveness is earned, not requested." He left without another word. As the door closed, Anna whispered, "It's over." Maggie shook her head. "No, darling. It's just the cleanup now." The following week felt strangely still. The phone stopped ringing. The mail no longer carried hidden threats. For the first time in months, Maggie could breathe without waiting for the next problem to arrive. John Hale stopped by to check the security system. "All quiet up here," he said, tapping the porch rail. "You're safer than the courthouse," Maggie smiled. "That's good. I plan to keep it that way." Anna visited every weekend, sometimes with the girls, sometimes alone. They talked less about what had happened and more about what came next. How to rebuild, how to trust again. At night, Maggie sat by the fireplace with her journal, now half filled with notes and plans. On one page she wrote, "The opposite of fear isn't courage. It's preparation." The cabin creaked softly as the wind shifted outside. For the first time since moving in, Maggie didn't feel like a guest in her own home. She was the mountain's keeper again, and she intended to keep it that way. Spring came quietly to the Blue Ridge. The snow melted off the eaves, and wild daffodils poked through the soil Maggie had once covered in worry. Her days found rhythm again. Coffee at sunrise, letters from friends, the soft crackle of the fire at dusk. Anna rented a small place in town with her daughters. Every Sunday, they came bearing bread, laughter, and stories from school. Maggie cooked stew, the girls fed the birds, and the air around them began to sound like family again. Safe, simple, real. Sometimes when the girls ran outside chasing the wind, Anna would sit beside her mother. No long speeches, just quiet smiles that said thank you without words. Maggie looked out at the hills one afternoon and realized she hadn't thought about fear in weeks, only gratitude. She opened her notebook, now filled not with evidence, but with lessons. On a clean page, she wrote, "Freedom isn't escaping people. It's learning who deserves a seat at your table." And then she underlined it twice, her pen steady as the mountain wind. A few months later, Maggie got a call from Vanessa Gomez, the social worker who had once inspected her home. "Mrs. Hayes, we're hosting a panel about elder safety and financial independence. Would you consider sharing your story?" Maggie hesitated. "I'm no public speaker," Vanessa laughed gently. "Just speak from truth. People remember that." So Maggie did. She stood in a small community hall, lights humming softly above her, and told her story without drama or bitterness. "I learned that documents protect better than emotions," she said. "If someone wants access to your life, make them earn it in writing. Boundaries don't end relationships. They define which ones survive." When she finished, the room was silent before applause filled the space. A man in the back stood, eyes wet, and said, "You just saved me from signing something I didn't understand." That night, Vanessa called again. "You reached people, Maggie," Maggie smiled. "Then maybe everything I went through had a reason after all." One rainy afternoon, Maggie stopped by her post office box and found a single white envelope among the usual bills. The handwriting was familiar, Jason's. She held it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a short, uneven letter. He wrote that he'd entered counseling, found steady work at a construction site, and was trying to make peace with himself. He didn't ask for forgiveness, only that Maggie tell the girls he loved them. Maggie read it twice, then folded it neatly back into the envelope. There was no anger left in her, only the quiet ache of understanding. That evening, she wrote a reply. "Jason, I wish you healing. The girls will always know you love them. My boundaries remain, but my resentment ends here." She signed it simply, Maggie. When Anna mailed it the next morning, Maggie felt lighter. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't about reopening doors. It was about locking them gently and walking away with the key. That summer, Maggie bought the small, overgrown orchard beside her property. Where others saw weeds and collapsed fences, she saw possibility. With help from Vanessa and Tom, she drafted plans for a small community of cottages, simple, safe homes for older adults who wanted independence without isolation. She called it Haven Ridge. Each cottage would have ramps, gardens, and wide porches for company. Twice a week, a shared van would take residents into town for groceries or doctor visits. The first 2 cottages went to widows who had attended Maggie's talk at the community center. "You made this happen," Vanessa told her one afternoon, walking the new gravel paths. Maggie smiled. "No, life did. I just listened." Even Jason contributed quietly, building benches for the garden through a local program. Maggie accepted them without comment. Gratitude didn't need words. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, Maggie looked at the growing village and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The mountain that once sheltered her pain was now home to new beginnings. A year passed, and Haven Ridge had grown into a small circle of cottages alive with laughter, vegetable gardens, and the smell of fresh bread cooling on windowsills. Maggie hosted a gathering every spring, a quiet celebration she called the Day of Holding the Line. Neighbors brought pies and folding chairs, filling the porch with conversation. Anna raised her glass and said, "Mom taught me something simple but powerful. Boundaries aren't distance, they're direction." The crowd clapped softly, and Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. When the sun dipped low, she sat alone for a moment, watching the ridge burn gold in the light. She opened her notebook, now nearly full, and wrote, "Peace isn't something you find. It's something you defend, one quiet choice at a time." Then she smiled, closing it gently. The wind rustled through the trees as if in agreement. For the first time in a long while, Maggie wasn't surviving. She was living. On a quiet evening, Maggie sat on her porch with her journal open and a cup of tea warming her hands. The mountain stretched before her, calm and eternal. She thought of the past year, of betrayal, boundaries, and rebirth, and began writing the 5 rules that had carried her through. 1. Write things down before you speak. 2. Keep proof, not grudges. 3. Say no without guilt. 4. Protect peace like property. 5. Share what you've learned. It multiplies strength. When she finished, she read them aloud to the empty air. Her voice didn't shake. "This cabin once stood for solitude," she said softly. "Now it stands for survival." The porch light flickered as the wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and rain. Maggie smiled. If my story helps someone else hold their ground, then none of it was wasted. She closed the journal, set it beside her, and leaned back to watch the stars climb over the ridge. The mountain, like her heart, was finally still,